Hello everybody, this is ManuS and welcome back to the final part of the Eternal set review with the Multifaction cards. So today we're going to talk about the remaining Multifaction and Factionless cards, and then we're done with reviewing the whole set. At the end I'll give you my top 10 Multifaction and Factionless cards, because it is so many cards. I decided to do a top 10 because we had 6 parts instead of 3. Okay, one last thing as usual. Please like, subscribe, share, and leave a comment down below. And please consider whitelisting EternalTitans.com and YouTube to help support the free content. And now on to the review. Okay, so we have like the tokens and cargoes that we already talked about. So let's start with display of knowledge. If you want my opinion on tokens and cargo, you can find it in part 4 of the series. Display of knowledge is actually one of the better displays. The main problem is finding a good use for it and a deck that wants it. But all in all, the effects are all pretty good and highly relevant. Putting an attacking enemy unit on the bottom of the enemy deck is really great. This is a very clean answer to a lot of things, including problem cards like Sultry and other recurring or entomb effects that can be very scary. Then we have a 3-cost fast tutor for relics, which is pretty exciting. First thing that comes to mind, of course, is Mask of Torment or Eternity Core, but those are not the only ones. The options are pretty good here. Like, for example, you could put a Sindel's Gift in your main deck and suddenly have 5 of them, and so on and so forth. So this card does a lot of pretty cool things. Just need to find a deck that it works in. And the last mode, give one of your units +2 attack and quick draw. Keep in mind this is permanent, not just this turn. So this is sort of the offensive removal. Like if you have a problem with a blocker, you can often use this just like a removal, put it on the unit that is being blocked and kill the opposing unit for free. So this has basically an offensive and a defensive removal mode, while the offensive removal mode is a bit limited but also has a huge upside because your unit is permanently stronger. And then you have the utility tutor effect. This card's really, really good. Yeah, just need to see what we can do with it. But this is among the best displays. I think this is like on par with Display of Instinct. Technically, it just is in a worse color combination, which is its main downside, I think. In Limited, of course, this is also amazing. Next, we have Tumbling Sloth. First off, in Limited, this is really good. Like a 3/4 for 3 is amazing. The cost is restrictive in Limited, like you need a bunch of fixing for this to be a reliable turn 3 play. If you ever have a relic and this has ambush in Limited, it can be quite the big blowout and quite the monster. And even in Constructed, I think if you have enough cheap relics, this card could actually be pretty playable, because being a 3/4 over having lifesteal and the ultimate of Ayan, this has real upside, since being 3/4 over 3/3 is pretty huge, between Torch stopping you from blowing out the opponent to blowing out a lot more units. But yeah, once again, the issue is the support, and if we have enough cheap relics to support something like this. But I could see a world in which this makes it into Constructed. Next we have Talia's Unwinding. It's the Tri-Faction Double Influence legendary. Here, in this case, it's a spell, and it has Void Bound. You sacrifice a unit to shuffle each player's hand and Void into their deck. Each player draws 7 cards. The interesting part here is, which I'm not 100% sure, since it's separate sentences, is if each player draws 7 cards, even if you don't sacrifice a unit. But I doubt it. I'm pretty sure the effects are connected. You have to sacrifice a unit for both to happen. One interesting thing that someone told me a while ago, because I haven't played with the card as you can see, is that Face Aegis on the opponent blocks the shuffling the hand away part. And the draw part, I think it blocks the whole card. and therefore makes it one-sided, or it only blocks the shuffling, so you don't want to play it into an opposing face Aegis. I'm not 100% sure anymore, but also if you have face Aegis and the opponent plays it, you just get to draw 7 and don't shuffle your hand away, but I'm not 100% sure if it blocks the entire spell. I think the guy told me that it only blocks the first part, which is really, really weird. So yeah, be careful with this and face Aegis interactions. Better experiment first and see how it works before having to choose in-game. And yeah, I don't think this card's very playable and constructed. It's pretty unique, so maybe there's some way to abuse it, but for now I can't think of anything. And in Limited it's kind of the same. Plus, it's a symmetrical effect and you have to also throw in a unit, so you're weakening your board and giving up resources where your opponent doesn't have to. Next we have Astromancer's Compass, the 1-cost colorless relic. Once per turn you may pay 2 to give one of your units +1 this turn, +1/+1 this turn. Not a very impressive card, clearly aimed at Limited to support relic synergies, and that's about it, and it's not even very good at that because it's a pretty weak relic. Then we have Bannerman, gain an influence of your choice, basically the influence fixing strangers as non-stranger, and it works for all 5 factions, but it only gives you 1 influence, not 2 different ones. So it's worse at fixing, but better at fixing a specific color, since yeah, it is more flexible than the strangers. So a decent 2-drop in Limited, especially in tri-faction decks. Then we have Iron Hook, another card that's just meant as a limited filler to give each color a small relic weapon and make it easier to support relic synergies, I think, and weapon synergies. Not great, but can be okay as a filler. Next we have Makeshift Barrier, an 0/5 endurance, and you can pay 3 to transform it into a Whirly Twirly, which happens to be a 2/2 flying, which you can also then pay 3 to transform Whirly Twirly into a Makeshift Barrier. So yeah, this is basically, as a lot of people, including myself, expected, the endurance has to do with the transformation. Basically you transform it into a Whirly Twirly, attack, and then you can transform it back, and then the endurance makes it ready on the opposing turn, so you can block with it. All in all, a very solid defensive card in Limited if your deck is a bit slower. But other than that, I don't think the card is very relevant. Then we have Replicator Engine. On summon you draw a Replicator Engine from your deck. So this is basically just replacing itself with another copy until you ran out of Replicator Engines. Of course, you can go pseudo-infinite with this, with Messenger Falcon, shuffling more Replicator Engines in your deck and stuff like that. But yeah, it's all pretty gimmicky and situational, but I don't know, maybe there's something cool you can do that is actually good with this abuse of this synergy and yeah, chaining these guys. But for now it's more like a cool gimmicky thing for people to mess around with rather than something that likely is actually good or relevant. In Limited, this is obviously worse because you need to have enough copies of this for it to be worth it, and that's going to be harder in Limited. And last but not least, we have Rumbling Contraption. It's a 6/4 Overwhelm, and on summon it exhausts itself, so it enters play depleted basically. Yeah, a pretty weak card, no synergies, very high power cost. I don't see this even making it into Limited decks usually. This seems a bit like a jab at the old Contraption card in Future Sight and Magic, and even the Contraption can reminds me a bit of the thing that I think Goblin was sitting on. So I think this is more of an inside joke than anything. Okay, time to talk about the top 10. Here's the top 10 as requested under a recent video. I'll try and pull up the cards that we are talking about to visualize it better. Let's see. First we have Howling Peak, obviously. Keep in mind this is in no specific order, this is unsorted. I just listed them in a random order. Howling Peak, one of the most impactful and most powerful cards to come out of the new set. A limited bomb, and in Constructed it's just an archetype staple. It just created multiple archetypes and improved every deck that it went into, basically even existing archetypes like Canadians. So yeah, this is one of the powerhouses to come out of the set that we will see plenty in the months to come. So brace yourselves. And next we have Zalchi, another powerhouse coming out of the new set. This is sort of like the counter to a lot of the peak decks, and also included in the Yennev peak decks. This is just a really powerful threat that requires very specific answers to not be completely overpowering. Since the Entomb is so strong, you can't just kill it because you basically add one attack and evasion to the opposing board and suddenly need even 2 answers to deal with both of it. So this will force people to have very specific answers. Permafrost is not a very good one, but it's an okay temporary solution. And then we're looking at cards like Feeding Time and Display of Honor and such as ways to contain Zalchi and not have him completely tear people to shreds. And yeah, this is really good against any slower mid-range and reactive control decks, and will definitely be a great one of the main tools that makes Yennev as strong as a faction. And in Limited, once again, this is also a bomb. Then we have the Smuggler cycle. I'll just take this one as an example. Yeah, the Smugglers are amazing. Having more options for the market is great, and the new options are really good, especially the Rakano and Argenport Smugglers are amazing, but even the Elysian Smuggler is very good. The Skycrack is like on the edge of playability, and the Xenon one is just really bad, even worse than the Skycrack one, I think. But all in all, these Smugglers broaden the market options for running multiple merchants or smugglers in one deck, and also increasing the impact of the merchant body in most cases. So definitely a very impactful and cool release. Next we have Lost Scroll. A bit of an innocuous card, but having reliable and color fixing ramp on 2, especially in these colors, is very, very strong. And yeah, greatly improved Winchester decks and Argenport decks alike, and is definitely one of the new main appeals of the Argenport faction, in my opinion, in any non-aggressive deck. Then we have Island Sharpshooter, basically the piece that brought back and revamped Rakano. This together with Warhelm creates a very nice 3-drop, basically a 4/2 charge Warcry, and also makes sure that the next unit you draw is gonna be a massive charge threat. And this is only the best thing you can do with this. There are still cards like Elder's Feather or Finest Hour that pair nicely with this to generate a big threat for the next unit you draw. So yeah, this is a really cool card, and even interesting for more mid-rangey good stuff. 3-faction approaches, similar to something like the old Ixtun Blade decks. So keep an eye on this guy, experiment with him. He, or rather, this woman, she can do more than just be in Rakano, I think, going forward. Then we have Regent's Tomb, my second favorite side after Howling Peak. It's a bit on the fragile side, but has a pretty good supportive agenda and a very powerful owner, basically. Turning this into a very nice utility card for controlling decks, and even a great win condition if you can protect it well enough. And yeah, it ranges from a great main deck option to being a one-off in like 8 smuggler markets and stuff like that, to constantly play it on turn 4. Just a really good card, and another defining card for the Argenport colors going forward, I think. Then we have, of course, the cargoes. They are a subtle addition, but first of all, having the option to run more than 4 Seek powers in 3 faction decks is really good and helps your influence, because running a couple more Seek power effects over more depleted powers balances them nicely against each other and makes your power flow better and your seeds function better. And also the transmute makes them good flood protection, allowing you to much safer run that extra power to make sure you hit all your power drops without actually flooding out, because later on your cargoes will just give you impactful random cards. This obviously holds most true in mid-range and control decks, and less so in aggressive decks, because a lot of the good cards you can get out of a contraband could be fairly expensive and not work as well in lower curve aggressive decks. But in mid-range decks, where you can eventually play everything you could get from a cargo, they can give you some really cool cards that you couldn't and wouldn't want to put in your deck, but can be amazing in the right situation. And they both create really cool gameplay scenarios, as well as making your decks more consistent in a nice and subtle way. Then we have the displays. I'll just put up Display of Instinct as a representation here, but all but the Kerendon display are pretty good and constructed, but my top 2 picks would be Instinct and Knowledge, but Honor and Ambition are also pretty good in their own way in constructed. They're just a bit more fringe and a bit more situational and clunky, while the Instinct and Knowledge are just like all around all-stars. Yeah, and the Kerendon one is just looking pretty weak, unfortunately. Next we have Brel, Soulist Apostate. This tri-faction double influence 7-cost legendary of Winchest might look a bit small, but this is a great way to kind of revive old armory approaches, since being able to buff the relic weapon you already have with +4/+4 and Warcry is massive. Just imagine a curve of Throne Warden into Daisho into Brel. It's just super devastating and beats most decks, and has a lot of protection for said Daisho built in between the 4 extra armor and the Aegis body of the Throne Warden, and then followed up by the additional body of Brel. You might have seen me mess around on stream with Brel Armory, and yielded quite some good results. And yeah, Brel is a really cool addition to this kind of plan and theme, and even does a solid job out of markets in other decks, as we have seen. And last but not least, as tense, since the options became a bit slim and I didn't want to like put individual smugglers or displays on there, because that would either make the list too long or would leave out other cool cards. We have Burn Them All. The card is not that impressive and that big of a deal at first glance, but it does a couple of really nice things. With the change to Obliterate, this provides a big burn spell that can one-shot Howling Peak, which might be pretty important. Also, the Amplify has nice synergy with Westwind Herald. Also, the Amplify provides it a way to make this much more appealing as a market card in mid-range and controlling grindier decks, because getting to 8 is not that unlikely. And then you have a fast removal that can deal 5 damage to 2 different things for 8 power, which is great. The fact that it's fast compared to Obliterate is also a big upside, and the fact that it is blue, making it fetchable by a lot more merchants and smugglers, is also a pretty big deal. So this brings a lot of flexibility and utility to the game and fills kind of a void that existed before, which is really nice. It's not format defining or format warping, but it provides nice additional options for a lot of existing and new things. Okay, this concludes the whole review of Defiance, and of course the review of the multi-faction cards for Defiance that has been going on for the last couple days. sorry that there was a bit of a delay at the end, but my sleep schedule is getting really messed up and I'm trying to fix it. So yeah, thanks for understanding. And yeah, as usual, if you enjoyed the series, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, share the video with your friends, and leave a comment down below what you think about the cards and the review, or what you would like to see in the future in terms of content. One last thing, as usual, if you haven't already, please consider whitelisting EternalTitans.com and YouTube to help support the free content. That would really mean a lot. Alright, that's it again. We are done with the Defiance review. I'm your host Manu S. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.